Hello, everybody. Theo and Martin here with a new edition of the No Name Show. Today, we want to talk about the art of communication because we really do believe that communication is an art. And I think a good question, Martin, to start with is who do you know or who do you know of that's a good communicator?
That's an excellent question. Maybe I would start with that. I think I'm not a very good communicator. So, and to do this show, I tried to. I hope I will get better during making these shows and these episodes, because I think this is a really good skill to have, and I have thought about it a lot, like recent years, that maybe take a training or something to just be really good at it, get really good at it. But I think Naval Ravikant is someone who's one of the guys who comes to my mind because he's able to speak quite fast. He's able to get his thoughts out, and his thoughts are usually they're like deep, but at the same time easy to understand. So I think that a part of good communication is when you are short, when you say something out short, clearly, but the idea comes across very well, and Naval's ideas are typically quite profound. So it's really interesting to listen to the guy. He speaks quite fast, but it's at the same time it's easy to listen. So when you listen to Naval for 5 minutes, you get a lot of information out of it, and it's very clear. So I would say Naval Ravikant. What about you? Who comes to mind?
Yeah, when it comes to interpersonal communication, so I think one of the best that I have seen, I don't know her personally, but I've seen her in action, talking with people, listening with people. And I think it's Oprah.
Oh, okay.
I think Oprah does a really good job at listening well, asking good questions, and summarizing what she hears from the person. Because communication is really like you exchange different ideas, different information, but in that exchange, you make sure that you understand what the other is saying, and then that they understand what you're saying. And Oprah, it's more of an interview, so she's basically trying to understand the other person, is not doing much of her presenting her ideas. So I think she's really good at that. And one of the people that I really enjoy listening to, the way they communicate and the ideas, the simplicity and the depth of ideas is Marshall Goldsmith. Martin, that he's one of my mentors. I got to meet him several times, and he's so able to communicate simply profound ideas. So when you're able to communicate profound ideas in a simple way, I think you achieve a lot.
Yeah. I was going to comment about the Oprah, that she has an advantage because she's an interviewer, and she only so the main job is to ask really good questions and listen. I think with communication, the harder part is to actually speak and speak in a way that you very clearly and shortly describe your ideas and get your thoughts through. And so there's two parts, right? So there's the communicator and the observer or interviewer, and I think the communicator or speaker part is harder.
Yes, to speak well is hard. It's also, I would say it's a challenge for both. Some people are really good at one, some people are really good at the other. And I think Oprah is really good at listening and understanding. Marshall's really good at communicating ideas very clearly and effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know he's not at the level of that Oprah is at understanding. Marshall's not. But I think also Oprah is not at Marshall's level of communicating ideas simply and clearly, and so that's why I mentioned both.
Okay.
Because you're right. It's both sending information and understanding it and being able to respond to it. So yeah.
Which are you better at? Are you a better interviewer, listener, or communicator?
I think I'm awesome at both.
Very good answer.
No, I'm kidding. I've tried to develop both. This is what I do. So part of my job is to be able to communicate well, to communicate simply my ideas, as well as to listen and understand where others are at. But I think if I were to choose, maybe communicating my ideas. This is something, Martin, my goal in life is to talk little and communicate much.
Yeah, this is very well said. I remember you said it some time ago when we spoke, and it was really very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I work hard at it. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, I'm writing this long letter to you because I didn't have time to write a short one. Right? And that's the point. The point is, it's really easy to ramble on and on and on. It's really difficult to communicate simply, clearly, not lose essential things. It's difficult. It's hard. So that's something, my goal in life is to get better and better at this. So communication is actually one of my favorite topics, and I do training seminars on this, and I try to learn myself all the time how I can do this better, how I can communicate better.
That's why you said when I came up with this topic that I love it.
Right. I was like, I have some value to bring to this conversation.
Very good, because I don't have this much. But I would say that I'm probably better at interviewing and listening than communicating, because I rumble like now. But it depends, right? Sometimes some days you're just better at it. Some days you're not so good at it. So
well, let me ask you this: are you a verbal processor?
What do you mean by that?
By that I mean, and very good question. Yeah, what do you mean by that? We should do that with people. Define what you mean by that. Yeah. So by verbal processor, I mean your ideas. Your ideas become clear as you discuss them, as you speak about them, rather than they just come out. You have to kind of like say them out in different ways to actually come out and crystallize your ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely. How did you say it?
It's verbal processor.
Verbal process. Yeah, I'm verbal processing a lot.
Right.
That's why I ramble. I try to say something, and the first time it maybe doesn't come out so well, and the second time it comes out better, and third time it's almost perfect, I think. So
right.
So if we could do this, if I could say everything 3 times, then we could cut the first 2, then it would be really nice.
Right. And I've noticed this about you, actually. You do ask good questions. You're interested, right? You're interested in what the other's saying. And even before we started recording these shows, and we were just chatting and talking and calling each other, I noticed that about you. And sometimes I remember one time I felt like, dude, you ask questions, I just talked, but I didn't find out much about you. So yeah,
I'm sneaky like that.
Right.
Because when you're talking, you're only repeating yourself. So when you listen, you might learn something new. So it's like a strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
So communication, man, this is good topics. So what are some, let's say we're going to talk about different things as part of communication. So you have a speaker, you have a receiver, and between them there's exchange of information, and if you see emotions, so that's, you trying to make sense that they're trying to exchange ideas and hopefully by this exchange, both parties be enriched. So what are some aspects that are important that you say, these are some things that we should tackle?
Okay. So I was thinking that should I clearly answer the question, or should I just speak a few ideas I got first?
Yeah, just, yeah,
To be
either
a
way.
good communicator, I should clearly answer your question, but I'm gonna go the other way.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard, but Elon Musk has this company called Neuralink. And the other day, I mean, like a month ago or something, I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast when he interviewed Elon Musk, and they were talking about Neuralink. And basically what Elon said is that today, like at this moment when we are talking with you, right? So at the moment, I'm trying to get an idea across, right? I'm trying to explain X, and you and the listeners might receive Y. So basically, because the lack of my skills of communication, and because every time when I communicate something, you need to interpret it. Yeah. And people have different interpretation, and it's about your previous experiences in life. It's about your how good listener you are, and there's so many facets, like you use this word facets. There's so many facets about this. So, and what Elon and Neuralink are trying to do is that when they add this chip or implantant to your skull, then basically Elon said that I don't remember it exactly, but basically the idea was that there's no interpretation anymore. So that if you think something, you have an idea in your mind, and we both have these chips with you, then I could send you the exact idea to you, and you would understand it exactly the same way that I wanted to. I have it in my mind. But yeah, today, unfortunately, we don't have it yet. But Elon said that maybe in 10 years we might have something like this. So that would be actually cool, because one thing is that everybody would understand everybody perfectly. But the other thing is that what he mentioned in this podcast was that we could receive so much more information, because what's slowing us down is the interpretation part, because the computers, they're much faster than us, because there's no interpretation, if I'm getting this right. Anyway, but your original question was that the aspects of a communicator, right?
Yeah.
So there's obviously my voice, the tone of my voice, how loud I'm speaking, if I'm speaking loud enough, or if I'm speaking really quietly, maybe it's hard to understand like this. And there's also my facial expressions, if I'm like angry or very happy. Then there's body language. So if I'm if I'm nervous, or I don't know, I'm not that good an actor, but if I'm nervous and not, so there's body language. There's gestures, like you can do stuff with your hands. If you want to, if you're on stage, you probably use your hands and you show like this.
Yeah.
And what else? So yeah, your voice, your tone of voice, the how loud your voice is, your body language, your gestures, your face expressions. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, words.
Of course, I forgot the most important thing.
Well, I don't know if it's the most important thing. There was a study done that they said what you mentioned, body language and tone of voice, amounted to over 90% of a message, and words less than 10. Actually, the study showed about 7% is words, the actual words. Because think about it, you can change the meaning with your tone. You can give a totally different meaning because of the tone of voice. So I think the whole package And then I would add, yeah, the words and the clarity. How clear are you? As we've talked earlier, how many words do you have to use in order to communicate an idea? And that's why when I mentioned Marshall, if I don't know if you've read his books, especially his two best-selling books, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and Triggers. Both of them I found so practical, so clearly written, and so helpful. They have been some of the more influential books in regards to leadership development, self-development.
Okay. Yeah. I should check those out because you have recommended these for me. I think it's the third time, like. Yeah, and it sounds the first one, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. This sounds really, the title is really good. I think this it makes it interesting for me to go and grab the book.
Yeah.
But you know, you mentioned words, right? But did you mean that like there's different ways to put the sentence together, right? You can say like, my name is Martin and I'm Martin, for example, right? So did you mean choosing the right words, or did you mean the number of words in a sentence?
Both. Both. Like when I said that my goal in life is to talk less and communicate more, I meant also the number of words you use. I think both are important to, I mean, now if you're just chatting, who cares if you're with friends and just chatting and nobody cares, and it's okay to ramble and go into more details. But I used to do this a lot, go into details when I talk about a story. Go into details, like, so it was like I think it was in May in 1984, and then my wife really helped me, especially when I was trying to communicate an idea, maybe based on a story or a story supporting the idea that I was presenting. She said, nobody cares what year it was. Nobody cares the month. Nobody cares about these details, right? Sometimes some details matter, but you also have to ask yourself, do these details matter to the point of the story?
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So I mean both. It's trying to be careful with the words and also the type of words you're using. I always appreciate people who are able to express complex, profound ideas in a simple way. I think that's difficult.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody, Martin, I have some people in my life that like to sound smart. And they like to sound smart because they look for words that are complicated and not many people heard of them, and they get so excited when they can use them. So there are people who like to sound smart, and there are people who are smart,
who are actually smart.
Right. So I try to be smart. I don't try to sound smart, right? And I also try to use the language that people understand. And man, if I can explain it to my kids, and now my kids are quite young, they can't understand everything, but it's a good test. If your kids are 7, 8, 9, 10, if you can try to explain your ideas to them and they get it and they're able to explain them to others, I think you're a pretty good communicator.
Yeah, that's a good test. Another test is your grandparents.
Right.
Maybe this is even more complicated to explain something to your grandparents. I mean, depends on the topic. Kids probably understand IT and technology better, but maybe life topics they don't. But nowadays, young kids are so smart already. So
that's a good point with grandparents. It's a good point what you're bringing, because especially something that's so complex and you're so complex. It's like you're so used to, let's say, computers, and they're not used to them. You know, what you have to do, I think, is to try to put yourself in their shoes and trying to imagine how it is to not know what you know about computers. And I think there's a book called Made to Stick, and the authors, two brothers, Dan and Chip Heath, they make the point, they talk about the curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
And they explain this concept of the curse of knowledge, saying that it's really difficult to put yourself put yourself in the shoes of someone who doesn't know what you know.
A beginner.
Right. To strip yourself of all the assumptions, of all the things that you built so many things on top, like computers. There's so many things in that you have to explain. And then it's like, okay, how would I explain it to somebody who doesn't know anything about it? Right. And I think that's a really good way to, when you're trying to, it's almost like first principles. If I could reduce it to the most basic components, how would I build and try to explain to somebody this idea? Yeah.
Man, you know, while you were speaking, I already had like 3 ideas, and I think I already forgot 2. and you know what? This is one of the questions that when I was writing down the ideas about this topic that we are covering today, right? Communication and the art of listening. Then one of the things I wrote down was that, let me just read it. When to continue listening instead of starting to talk, even if you have much to say, and why. So while you were talking, I had these ideas, and then I remembered that I wrote this down. So maybe quickly what ideas I had, and then we can discuss this, what I just read. So what ideas did I have?
Let's see if you remember.
Yeah. But maybe we can maybe you can answer this. When to continue listening instead of starting to talk, even if you have much to say, and why. I can answer it, right?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that in the context of doing this show, right, I would like to add stuff when you talk, right? But I don't want to interrupt, because when we start talking over each other, then there's no point, right? No one understands anything. But before recording this show, when we were discussing, like, we had monthly calls, right? And I was usually going for a walk, and then we were speaking, and you mentioned that I was asking questions and listening, and at the end of the call, you were thinking like I was talking all the time. In that scenario, it was good for me, because, you know, I got new knowledge, right? But today, when we are doing this show, and what I mean, we have 2 goals, right? One goal is to just learn from each other, right? But the other goal is to actually, that when we get an audience, or if we get that other people would be interested to listening as well, and getting many ideas, right? So then in that scenario, I would like to add stuff, right? Because I'm not only thinking about myself, I'm also thinking about the audience. So that was my answer. But what would be your answer? When to continue listening instead of starting to talk, even if you have much to say, and why?
Yeah, that's a very
good question, right?
It's a good question. So when I would say, man, it really depends. Sometimes some people need to be stopped. Stopped, because sometimes they just create like a monopoly on the conversation. They take over and they talk. And to be honest, Martin, like, let me be honest with myself. I used to be that guy. I used to be that guy who would capture a conversation and share all my wisdom with the audience, whoever was, like, I'm talking about like in the group, 2 or 3, even in one-on-one. And that was not good. And because I'm so excited and I talk about the ideas and, you know, whatever the topic may be, some people, and especially in Estonia, people were like polite and didn't say much and didn't interrupt and didn't. Here's the thing. The good thing for me was that I have a really good wife, really wise wife. And whenever I was with her and in a group of people, my wife would at the end of the conversation, she said, Theo, you didn't ask them any questions. So I thought, yeah, really, I didn't realize that, but I had so much to share. I had so much to talk about. I said, yeah, but did you, that's not communication. That's not dialogue, it's monologue. That's not communication, right? So it really helped me. My wife really helped me. And this, sometimes when I would forget, under the table, she would kick me, and but over time I got better, and I'm very purposeful. That's why when you and I were talking, I felt you genuinely were interested and were asking questions, and then I thought myself, right, and I said, hey Marty, this is not good, man. I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to just me talk. I want to be a conversation, so yeah, and I would say, so sometimes people just, man, I don't know. If you're in a group, the way I would do it, I would say, well, I wouldn't try to be nice, but I would say, I'm wondering what others are thinking. And I actually do this in the way because I do training seminars. If somebody kind of tries to take over, I let them express, but then I say, hey, I think there's a lot of wisdom in the room. And we would deprive ourselves if we didn't tap onto the wisdom that's in the room, onto the people, the wealth of information, the knowledge and experience that's in the room. So sometimes I try to that's what I try to do, bring others into the conversation. The sad thing was I was the one capturing the conversation. So, but if it's on one-on-one, I'd say, yeah, it just depends. I would try to listen, especially if the person, the opposite of that is trying to, you're saying something and I have some ideas, and guess what? I stopped listening to you because I don't want to lose my ideas.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh man, I really gotta say this. So I don't pay attention to you. I start formulating. Or I try to hold on to that idea that came into my mind. I don't think that's good. So here's what I do. I use a tip, because sometimes in seminars, I really think an idea would help or a story would help. So what I have is a piece of paper in front of me, or if I'm in front of a board, I just used write a keyword, a keyword, one word or two words, right? So I just jot them down and I continue to listen. And then at the end, I can present what I think.
That's a good tip, because again, while you were talking, I was getting ideas, right? And I had the same thing that you just described, that when you're listening to someone and you get an idea, then you start to hold on to this idea, to not forget about it, and you stop listening, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to, which is more important, right? Is my idea more important, or is listening more important? And the keyword thing is, I should practice this. I should practice this during our. Oh, you're already doing it. Nice.
Yeah, so I have it in front of me. So I just jot down. If a thought comes to mind, I just jot down one word, two words, and it's not distracted. It's not distractive for me. Hopefully, it's not too distracting for the speaker. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is I've observed this so I'm learning nutrition, right? So I've observed this behavior with especially one lecturer who was teaching us motivational interviewing, which we might discuss today as well, maybe later. And she was doing it really well. When someone was, and that someone was often me, sharing their ideas, and it was taking long, then she would say something like you mentioned, that in a nice way to give the voice to other students as well, and also that there's this distinction that when you're a lecturer and some student starts to take over the leader role, then you kind of have to hold the leader role at all times, right? So that you wouldn't lose it. But who I am to teach this right now, I'm not a lecturer, but yeah, man. And another thing while you were speaking was that what was the other thing? You see, I clearly have a problem.
Something like this.
Yeah.
You know, I often say, Martin, if it was important enough, it will come back. Let's say if I don't have the paper and pen and something, it's like, hey, if it's important enough, it will come back. If it's not important enough, then it will just not come back during the conversation.
And you know what? It just came back that I had these ideas, and then at the same time, so one thought in my head was to listen to you, right? Then the other thought was that I got these ideas, and then, or maybe we should speak about threads, right? Computers have threads, right? You can, to multitask. So if you're doing something in your computer, one program is running on one thread, right? And if you're multitasking, switching programs, then another program might run on another thread, right? And these threads can run simultaneously, just to simplify this. Yeah. So in my head, there was like 3 threads running. One was listening to you, one was capturing ideas, and the third one was actually analyzing my thinking that I should only interrupt or say something if it's really worth saying something.
That's a great lesson in communication.
Yeah, and then I was starting to notice that many of the things I wanted to say and to interrupt you would not really benefit the discussion. These were things like, oh, I've noticed this as myself, and so on. So it's like, and I think to learn this skill, it would already make you a much better communicator.
Man, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it. I couldn't agree more with asking yourself the question before speaking: is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth it? You know, because oftentimes what we think of is, am I right? Maybe. Is it worth saying it? Maybe not. So it doesn't matter if you're right. The question is it worth saying this at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's a great example. I mentioned Oprah before. She had given, I don't remember if it was a few years ago, she had given this speech. Everybody was praising her for it. It was in the media, and people were saying, Oprah should go for president, Oprah for president. And Trump, I think he was running at the time, or he was president at the time. I think he was president at the time.
Uh-huh.
Trump tweeted something mean about her, saying, I saw a very insecure Oprah at the show, and something mean about her. And then she didn't respond in any way. She didn't tweet back. She didn't respond, nothing.
Uh-huh.
And people asked her, you know, Oprah, Trump is saying these things about you. How are you going to respond? And she said, I would only respond if I felt that he was open to hearing me.
Okay.
Right? So I thought, man, in other words, is it worth it? Right? Is it worth responding? Do I feel that on the other side, there's somebody wanting to hear what I have to say? If I don't see that, I might as well shut up. And I think that's a great lesson in interpersonal communication or in a group communication. And if I feel that on the other side, people don't want to listen to me, don't want to understand where I'm coming from, why would I even bother putting the effort to explain myself? Now, if you're in a team, if you're in a company, I think sometimes, I mean, let's say if you're the leader and the people don't bother, you gotta do something about the team and the way it functions. But a lot of the times, if people are not, especially interpersonal friends, colleagues, if people are not willing to hear me out, why should I bother explaining myself or talking, responding?
Totally agree. I mean, man, you're saying things that are gold. Yeah.
Gold, nuggets of gold.
Yeah.
For our large audience listening to us, our millions.
Yeah.
Right now, I think we have like what, 5 subscribers?
I think we have 2.
2. Okay.
And one is me, so we have 1.
Okay, I gotta subscribe, dude. I haven't even subscribed. I gotta subscribe to this. Yeah.
All right. First 3.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot. So, Martin, what other aspects of communication, or maybe examples of good communication or bad communication from your own life or from the life of others that you've witnessed come to mind?
Yeah. Sorry. One thing I was going to talk about was that how to avoid these awkward situations. Like you just told us this story, and I also recognized this. I was I was going running with my cousin, I think, and I think he asked me something, and then maybe it was my fault. I'm not 100% sure because I don't remember it exactly what was the topic and so on. But basically, I started answering his question. And my fault could have been that I answered the question in a too long way, right? And usually what they teach you is that if someone asks you a question, then if you can, you should say that yes, and then explain, or no, and then explain. Not the other way around, that you start to rumble, and then at the end of the rumbling, you say that the answer is no or yes, right? So you should do the other way around. But so maybe it was me that I was explaining myself in a too long way, in a way too long, right? But yeah. Maybe, so at some point I recognized or observed that he wasn't really listening to me. He was doing something in his phone, or I don't remember exactly the situation. And then I thought that what's the point of talking, right? And then I just shut up. I didn't say anything. And it was okay. But sometimes these situations can be awkward. Because, and there's many situations. So one situation is that if someone asks you something and they're not genuinely interested in your answer, right? Yeah. You start to explain something, you might feel that you have a lot to say. Maybe you're an expert on something and someone asks advice and then they are not paying attention, right? Yeah. The other thing is that maybe the situation is that someone is talking and you are no longer interested in listening, right? And you're just saying that, and you're not listening. You're thinking about what you're gonna eat for dinner, right? So do you have some tricks how do you manage these awkward situations that they wouldn't feel awkward for you, and more importantly, maybe for the other person? Because I mean, if it feels awkward for you, you can just, whatever, you can just forget about it, right? But if you make someone else awkward, then maybe it doesn't, maybe you don't come across as a nice person, or, people are sensitive.
Yeah. I think, well, let me give you an example how I did it with one guy. I did my graduate work in Chicago in psychology. So all my friends used me as the free counseling sessions. Right? They would talk and I would listen, and I was in that environment I just mentioned earlier. So my tendency is to take over the conversation, but I had been in an environment where I was taught, listen, ask questions, pay attention. So I was doing that, right? And I was doing that in the relationship with my friends. And I had one friend, Joe, and Joe was unstoppable at talking. I mean, Joe could talk a lot. So one time, I mean, that happened a lot, several times. I mean, one time, he had talked for over an hour. I think it might have been an hour and a half.
Wow.
Just him. Just him. A bunch of different things. And then at the end of that hour and a half, this is what I did. I said, Joe, do you realize that you have talked for an hour and a half without asking me a single question? And he stopped and he thought, dude, that's right, man. I'm so bad at this. I mean, he was very open, very, not defensive at all. And he was one of my closest friends. Yeah, so I could do that with him. So then he said, Theo, man, dude, this is bad, dude. Like, I got to get better at this. And, so please, like, help me, like, bring to my attention when I fall into this, but don't wait for an hour and a half, right? Just stop me earlier. But I said, Joe, what I wanted to show you is, look how long you can talk without actually asking the other anything. So for me, it was also like an experiment and also like a lesson for him. If you can talk for an hour and a half without asking a single question of the other person, it's not very good. So Joe got a lot better at this. And now, I mean, even when we talk, he's in the States, I'm here. Whenever we talk on the phone, say, dude, tell me about you. And how's your family? How are the kids? How, he's gotten better. And what I like about this, and again, this was a person who wanted to hear what I wanted to say, who was open. Now, the question is, would I do this with somebody if I don't know? Sometimes you don't know if they're open to hear. And Martin, I don't know, man. I'm pretty, I try to be nice, but I'm a pretty straightforward person. So I say what I think, especially if people ask me. I mean, if people ask me, I would tell you the truth. I would tell you what I think. And, even if that is uncomfortable for you, it hurts you, I do that, with my wife. I do that with my close friends. Because, I mean, especially if you're in a relationship, like so close to your wife, your partner, husband, I think, especially if they ask, I mean, there's no,
I want to interrupt you. Were you always this straightforward, or was it something that you noticed that, I should actually be more honest and straightforward, and you learned it? And if so, then how did you learn it?
Good question. No, I wasn't always so straightforward. Here's what I did. I would keep it inside me in many situations. And man, I would harbor within me resentment, bitterness. I don't like this person, because things would kind of like pile up, and those were still there unresolved. I never would put them out. And guess what? So I would be passive, not say anything, and then it will burst out into an aggressive way, into like an argument, a fight, and that was not good. So, having studied psychology for 3 years helped me get better at not holding things in. Just, if something happens, if something bothers me, I go and I tell people, like, if they do something and that bothers me or like it offends me, it rubs me the wrong way, I just say it. And now, and then I feel free. If they don't want to accept it, if they find excuses, then I'm like, okay, it's their problem. It's not my problem anymore. But I think as long as you don't say, it's your problem. It's your problem. It doesn't matter what the other person has done, because they may have done things without thinking about it. They may have done things, unintentionally. And you stay there, you're hurt, you're offended. And what often happens is they should know. I mean, it's so obvious, but it's not always. It's not always obvious. So that's why I think if you have a problem, you should own the problem. You own the problem. You're responsible of making others aware of how that impacted you, and so I think that's something I try to do, and dude, it was funny. I was working with this one company, and we were in a group of people, and this one guy said, I think they were going on a hiking together, and there was one guy who was ruining the time for everybody. And I said, did you say something to him? No, I just stopped going on those trips. Did you like those trips? And he said, yeah, I really like them, but this one guy was ruining them. And I thought, what? Like, that's the time to step up and say something nicely, but in a straightforward manner.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's something I usually try to say things out.
Okay. So what I got out of your answer was that basically you learned from your own mistake. So at the beginning, you were keeping all inside, stuff were piling up. You started to feel resentment towards people.
Yeah.
And then at some point you studied psychology, and you thought that, and you observed about this yourself, that you can't go on like this.
Right.
And then, but was there some two questions? Was there a specific moment when you had enough? Is there a story behind it? And the second, actually, there's third question also. The second question is, what did you do to get rid of this baggage? Like, stuff were piling up for a long time. So, and usually when something piles up in my experience, when something piles up with one person, right? Then there's two ways. You either go and say everything out, or you totally
cut off the relationship,
cut the connection. Yeah. And then after some time, let's say half a year or something like this, in my experience, after cutting off, you will no longer feel resentment, and maybe you reconnect, and it's better, but you need some time.
So Martin, if you ask me, the first question was there a time where I felt like this is, I don't know if it was a specific moment. It was my pattern, right? Because you're passive, you're piling up, and eventually there has to be an outlet somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And if people keep them inside, they develop psychosomatic symptoms, meaning all the stress, all the resentment, it expresses itself in physical pain. So you actually feel physical pain, but there's not the reason is the stress, and that's why they're called psychosomatic symptoms. And what I would do is I wouldn't wait until then. I would just blow up. So it was not healthy. It was not, it was not serving me well. It was not serving the people around me well. So I realized that. And that's why it was a journey of changing that, so yeah, I think now I have to, I have to always, when I have to do confront somebody. I'm known in my circle of friends. One friend of mine said, "You are the most challenging person in my life."
Oh, I would love to have friends like that.
Yeah, because I like, for one, I like to be challenged. When somebody brings the attention to me and said, "Hey, Theo, you're doing this, or this is not so good," or I feel that this is, with the purpose of helping me, right? It's not like the people who are just trying to be toxic and dump their baggage onto me, right? Like, it's the people who are saying things that they are seeing in me that are not right. And to be honest, Martin, some of the best aha moments I've had as a result of those types of conversations when people challenge me.
Okay.
So like my wife, when my wife said, "You didn't ask anybody any question," right? That's a challenge. That's a challenge. It doesn't feel good. But if you're able to learn and listen and listen and learn, then you're better off. So I always try to turn my critics into coaches. I try to turn those who criticize me with a purpose of of helping me, I see them. I see them as helpful. I don't run away from them. I actually invite them in. You know this, even after a training that I do, what helps me the most is I have a time at the end where I ask everybody there, I say, you know, you can ask what was the most helpful thing for you during this time? Mm-hmm. And I say, what is one thing I could do better? Because I know I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And even if you've enjoyed this training and you felt it was valuable, what is something I could do, even if it's small, to make it better? I always ask that kind of feedback at the end. Why? Because I want to get better so that I can serve people in a better way. It's not about my ego. It's about, contributing to people and, doing things better, improving. So anyways, long answer to the question.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, you answered that there wasn't a trigger. There wasn't a specific point of the trigger. You didn't answer though that how did you get rid of the baggage? And
what baggage? What do you mean by baggage?
Like when you were piling up, did you just explode and then that was the trigger and that was it? Or
yeah, so that's how I would get rid of it. Like I would, and then I would have a conflict, and then I'll have to like clean the mess, which is a lot more work. So I think by not saying things openly, constructively, honestly, you just pile up stuff that eventually doesn't do you any good and affects the relationship with the people in your life. You can't, if you have something against, let's say you did something that pissed me off, and I felt, man, Martin was such a jerk. He did that. I can't believe he did that. But if I don't tell you, and I wouldn't have a normal relationship with you. I want to have normal, good relationship with the people around me, especially the close people around me. So in order for that to happen, you have to have, I would say this, the depth of your close relationships is given by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have with them. Right? Yeah. So if I want to have deep, meaningful relationships with people around me, I must engage in uncomfortable conversations with them.
Dude, we must have a fight. Yeah. Three things, right? I was using your trick. I was writing stuff down.
Good.
I'm learning as we are doing it. So one thing that you said that if I was being a dick, right, and you never said something that bothered you, then you wouldn't feel normal with me, right? And the other thing is that I might never know that I was a dick, right?
Yes. It doesn't help you either. Yes.
Exactly. So that's one keyword I wrote down. So, and it wasn't dick. So another thing I wrote down was I asked you like, how did you get rid of this baggage, right? And I said that in my experience, I've had two different methods to deal with it. One is that I just cut people off for like, I don't know, 6 months or forever. But I had this case like I cut some people off for like 6 months or something, and then we start reconnected and everything is fine now, right? So that was one way to deal with this baggage, right? During these 6 months, I didn't communicate with these people, and then these issues, I think that I didn't like forget about it, but it's just because I wasn't thinking about them, because I wasn't. When you interact with people and you have problems with these people, then every time when you interact with them, you will be reminded about the issues you have, right? So when you don't interact for 6 months, then you will not have these issues for 6 months, right? And I think like 6 months or something is a long enough time to, almost have a clean slate. Right? Yeah. But although everything is okay now, I still know that this time I'm gonna say stuff and I'm gonna put some boundaries, right? And one other thing I wanted to say was that I had this. So I've been like, I'm quite easygoing, right? When someone says like shit to me, then I don't get mad and I don't get like sad either, right? I'm just like, I don't take it very seriously, right? Usually. And this also means that it's actually not good, because this also means that when this is happening all the time, right? Let's say I have a friend who's saying shit about me, or putting me into not the best situations around other people, right?
Yeah, it puts you down in front of other people.
Yeah, and if I don't set the boundaries at the first time it happens, or the second time, right? If I'm just like, oh, it doesn't hurt me because I'm quite easygoing, right? Then this person thinks that this is okay to act like this, right?
Yeah.
And this is not good. So I thought that my strength is that I don't take stuff seriously, right? But it's actually it is a strength, but you still need to have clear boundaries, because otherwise, at some point, this will be bad for you, right? And I had this experience, and it was bad. But you know what? How Naval Ravikant gets rid of this baggage is that, and it's not only about communicating with people. It's all the stuff that happens in your life. Like usually our everyday life is like mine isn't very fast, but usually for people it's quite fast, right? And when your everyday life is fast, you have a lot of situations happen to you, and you don't have the time to process everything at the time when it happens to you, right? Mm-hmm. And then this stuff starts to pile up. And what Naval Ravikant says is that a way to deal with it, to get rid of this baggage, what has happened, maybe for some people it has happened for like 30 years. There's definitely people who have, let's say, worked for 30 years. They've had a lot of situations and experiences, and they never took enough time off to just reflect what's going on in their mind, right? And there's such a huge baggage that that what Naval does is that he doesn't do it anymore, I think. But what he recommends is that if you want to get rid of your baggage, if you want your monkey mind to almost shut up, it's never gonna totally shut up, but it will be a lot less active when you do this. So what you need to do is, for 60 days, every morning when you wake up, you just sit down and you meditate for 1 hour. And by meditation, it doesn't have to be some yoga pose or whatever. You just sit down and you let whatever thoughts come to your mind, and you do nothing. And what this really does is that just all this shit that's been piling up, we are swearing a lot today, or me, all this stuff that has been piling up, now you are processing it slowly. And if you do it 30 to 60 days, then at some point, you will notice that there's a lot less going on in your head, because you have worked these issues that you had. You have finally worked them out just by listening to yourself.
Yes, I think that can help. If now, I don't know if it helps everybody, if it has to do, the baggage has to do with personal hurt. Mm-hmm. Right? And so if somebody did something to me, now it may because of time, and you sit in silence and you meditate upon it, but it really depends on the person as well. But if somebody has done something deeply hurtful, I would say there is almost, I mean, you, like you said, you can cut them off. Mm-hmm. If they're close and you want to continue the relationship, I would say a better way would be to confront the problem, the issue, to have that uncomfortable conversation we were mm-hmm. talking about earlier. So yes, but I like the idea, because we also live in a world of fast-paced information, distraction at every step of the way. So mm-hmm. to have Okay, an hour is a lot, but even if you can have 20 minutes in silence, alone, with no distraction, just your thoughts, I think that's a step forward, and that's good for anybody.
Yeah. So we've come from communication to meditation.
Yes. So let's now, because we try to keep this to an hour. So Martin, let's kind of like sum up some of the lessons we have.
Yeah.
You're good at that. So
maybe you try this time.
Well, okay. So let's start with the most recent thing. So, approaches in the way you communicate with people. If it gets uncomfortable, awkward, you can cut them off. I don't know if that's the most healthy and helpful long term, especially with close people. If you cut them off, then you may run into other difficulties. Then you have to say, why didn't we talk for 6 months? Anyways, so cut them off. Better situation, better approaches. Talk about it, confront them, and maybe next time we can talk about how do you confront a person in a good way, in a healthy way. We can continue this topic for next time, because I think we can talk a lot about on this topic. So I think that's one. Another idea that we talked about was to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations if you want deeper relationships. Because if you want to have depth in your relationship, you have to be willing to engage in uncomfortable conversations. And how to do that, we'll probably discuss next time. Also, another thing that we have talked about was that there is interpretation. So there's speaker, receiver, and you always interpret. You have filters by which you interpret, given due to your background, family background, social background, cultural background, all these kinds of things that you interpret. So if you're just talking and people are not really understanding, it's not really communication. So we talked about the idea of trying to be simple and short. It's really effective. You can simply express your point of view and shortly, that's a bonus. And it takes effort because it's easy to ramble. These are some of the things that came up. What else have we talked about?
Yeah.
Have I missed anything?
Yeah. Your last point was speak less, communicate more.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Let me check the notes. Yeah, we started who were the most
yes, the
best people, the best communicators or interviewers. You mentioned Oprah for being the best interviewer, and you mentioned Marshall to being the best communicator. I mentioned Navar Ravikant. He's a Silicon Valley investor, tech investor, and kind of now he's doing a lot of philosophy, like thinking and explaining. He's famous for his Twitter threads. So he's posting a lot of tweets in like threads. It's interesting. You should check it out. He also has a book.
Yeah, I listened to his interview. I don't follow him, but I listened to him. But I think it's important to notice the lessons. With Oprah, the lesson we drew from that was, if people are not willing to hear you out, don't waste your time explaining yourself or speaking. Right? That was the lesson from Oprah. And from Marshall was, be clear, be simple, be practical and deep. I think those are the lessons from him in communication.
And maybe also, you know what, while you were at some point during our discussion, let's say 10 minutes ago, or 15 minutes ago, I went into this interviewer role. I don't know if you noticed it, but I did the switch, like, okay, I'm trying to interview now, right? Okay. So what point I'm making here is that in every conversation, you should maybe first think about, what is your role? Am I an interviewer? Am I trying to communicate something? Maybe you're just an observer when someone else, like two people are talking, right? So maybe it helps to clarify for yourself that what is your goal during this communication, and what is your role, right?
Yeah.
And if you define this, then it's probably easier, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm not making a conclusion. I'm already bringing up new
You're
points.
adding new ideas.
Yeah. But yeah, we mentioned interpretation. You already mentioned. I just made this Elon Musk and Neuralink example. How to speak one thought at a time, right? Clearly, loud enough. We also,
you mentioned body language. Maybe next time we can talk a little bit about body language.
Yeah. And what else? And I was asking about these awkward situations, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
and I mean, based on that, we mentioned that. Maybe I've already said that, but you can be passive, not say anything, and it piles up in you, and then it either you start having physical symptoms like physical pain, or you blow up and you become aggressive, and it can be a mess. And you have to clean up afterwards if you want to mend the relationship. Or you can be assertive. You can explain and confront, and in a healthy way. And I think maybe next time we'll deal more. How can you confront in a healthy, constructive way? And maybe some of the lessons we've learned, and some of the examples, some of the failures, at least I've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been fun, man. Good to see you. And until next time, we will think about this topic a bit more and come back to it and fill in the gaps that exist right now.
Yeah, and it's a good time to set a goal. I'm setting a goal to rumble less, and maybe if our viewers are feeling like they are rumbling as well, then it's a good time to set a goal. That because like we said at the beginning, I think that communication is, if you are a great communicator, then it's a lot easier to live, I guess.
Yeah.
In business and in personal relationships as well.
Yes. By the way, let's talk about this next time. Why? How is it more difficult? How is it easier, or how is it more difficult than if you don't communicate well? In personal life. I think that's a great topic to start off with next time. That, along with how do you confront well.
Okay. So then it was fun. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like button.
Yes.
And see you next time, guys.
See you next time. Thanks for watching.
Ciao.